To hell with the date on your birth certificate. Let's talk about what we have in common across generations. Life, sex, and tech at any age. Welcome to Age Blind with Nancy Shenker.
Hey, boys and girls, welcome to Age Blind, where the date on your birth certificate is meaningless because we look for things that we have in common across the generations as opposed to the things that divide us. And this episode is going to be especially fun and hot because this whole summer we're going to be tackling topics related to the hot summer of 2025. And this one is actually a two-parter. We are going to be talking about the summer of love, and this is part one of a two-parter. The second part is our guests are going to be two other podcasters who have a podcast called Meat Market, and they're going to be talking about dating in the summer of 2025. So we're going to be leading into that, but this one is not about the apps or about swiping left and swiping right. It's more the soft human side of summer romance. And we have a great lineup of guests today. I'm going to let you each introduce yourself and not only say who you are and what you do, but how you and I became connected. Because since I started the podcast, I cast out a pretty wide net to find guests. And this one is especially interesting in terms of how we all found each other. So why don't we start with you, Dr. Diane?
Hey, everybody. I'm really excited to be here with you all. My work is as the libido doctor. So, my website's mylibidodoc.com. And my work is really in helping long term monogamous couples keep their passion or get back to their passion, desire, and excitement and great sex in their relationship. So, it's a really exciting conversation, I think, to have today because a lot of my work is really looking at the new relationship energy, that hot summer energy we're going to be talking about today, and what's happening scientifically to the brain in that new relationship energy, and how we can take those concepts and actually apply them also to keeping and making our long term monogamous relationships still full of that passion, desire, and hot sex. So,
Love
really
that.
excited to be here. And I found out about you guys just honestly by going through, and I'm always going through my podcast feed and searching for different people that do things. And some search term I found came up and listened to one of your shows. And here we are today.
Well, thank you. And, just for our listeners and our viewers, this summer you're going to be seeing lots and lots of pictures of happy couples at Cinque Terre and on the beach. And you never really know what's going on in their bedrooms. So I think we're living in this weird era of FOMO. And you're like, why is everybody else having a hot summer except for me? Don't believe that, but Dr. Diane will help you if you are one of those couples, keep that spark alive and keep the heat on wherever you happen to be in the world this summer. And Audrey, you're next.
Well, I'm so happy to be here, meet you all. I am a soul therapist, a psychic therapist. Sometimes they call me the Buster. I have all these weird names. I'm a therapist at Seasons Rehab in Malibu, and I work with trauma, addiction, you name it. But at the root of it, it always comes down to relationships. So I came up with a fast way because sometimes I don't have a lot of time to work with someone. They could like go off and use or die almost, I mean, it's very serious. People come in with very serious issues. So I had to come up with fast ways to transform. And so I did. It's my own thing and it's my passion. And I love to help people get married if they want to get married. And I kind of put it into a system, a soul system to look at the deep energy of the soul, which means past lives, the other side, energy. Because sometimes, you can divorce, but you're still energetically tied, right? So my goal is to do it as fast as possible and help you be free and find love again and happiness again.
Love that. And we also met just, kind of randomly through
Yes.
your publicist.
Yes. My publicist, yes, amazing because it's I want to reach as many people as possible. So I've had a publicist for many years and she found you. Valerie Allen, amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. And Jim.
Well, again, I'm very pleased to meet two new friends. I've known Nancy for over, a year and a half or so. I am retired, so I am not an influencer. I don't have a podcast. I have a lot to say, of course, about life and love and everything else, and Nancy will bubble about that later, I'm sure. Nancy and I had the pleasure of meeting online on Bumble a year and a half ago when she was visiting her daughter in Maryland. I live outside of DC. So the stars aligned and we connected and we became fast platonic buddies. I thought when I saw her profile, I thought, wow, okay, she lives in Phoenix, I live in DC. That's not going to work at all for me. But I thought, I've got to meet this lady with so much mojo and pizzazz and zing and zest. So so we've become friends and we talk all the time about some of her projects, and I have chimed in a little bit about some of her projects. So a little bit about me, just briefly. So I'm retired, fully retired, almost 2 years ago. In fact, maybe as we roll here, I'll tell you why that's important, just related to summer love, because it was the summer that I, as I call, graduated. I spent the first half of my career in Los Angeles area in corporate finance. And then, long story not long, I was married for a long, long time. I have three wonderful sons. The twins are 40 and my youngest is 30. And they're all doing well, knock on wood. Then 16 years ago, I ended up landing a job with the federal government in the intelligence business. I have a budget background, so I never got involved in, really crazy stuff, but I did budgets for several agencies related to intelligence. And I think the big picture about me is I'm one of the luckiest guys in the world. And I'm intellectually curious, so I'm delighted to hear what you all have to say. I have to say, Dr. Diane, I really enjoyed looking at a couple of your YouTubes. I was very impressed with the production, how you integrate some of the little visuals in there, and your engaging guests. So, like I said, I'm looking forward to hearing what you and Audrey have to say. And I know Nancy's the ultimate MC. So there you go.
Yes, and the reason why Jim and I never dated is we could not be more different in terms of life view and temperament. I am like classic creative, hippie chick, believe in some of the woo-woo stuff. The universe is looking out for me. And Jim would only date people in a 30-mile radius. And I used to give him such shit. And I'd say, well, what if I moved to Maryland and I was 33 miles away as opposed to 30 miles away? But as he said, we have since become fast friends. And when I write dating guides, which I just published my second one available on Amazon called Finding Love, I always send things to Jim because I know I'm going to get a 180-degree opinion different from mine. And then the right answer is, of course, somewhere in the middle. I wrote another book called Manifestation for Skeptics, which is combining the soul-based stuff with the scientific stuff. So, speaking of science, this is really interesting. There is no scientific evidence that more people fall in love over the summer than other times of year. In
Oh,
fact, season, which is reference to handcuffs, is when people are looking for significant others in fall and winter. But during the summer, we are looking for people to play with, to have adventures with, and we have more downtime. So I'm hoping more people will be listening to this episode because I'll be driving on vacation or flying somewhere. So all of my summer episodes are geared around fun things that we're going to do this summer. So other things like what do you find in your own practices? Dr. Diane, let's just start with you. Do you find that there are any specific trends or patterns over the summer that are different from the rest of the year?
Well, I'm a scientist at heart. So I always like considering like what is going on scientifically to drive people towards, say, more dating and romance and these types of things that we're talking about here. And I believe that one of the things it could be is we do see that when we have more sunshine, we get more melatonin or more serotonin, our happy hormone. We get more production of vitamin D. So I do think there is this tendency of people to be in a more relaxed state. Yes, there's vacations like you've mentioned, but there's also this tendency to be like, wow, I'm out, I'm wearing less clothes because it's hot. Like, so we're almost like not hiding as much. While that's also combined with like truly an actual chemical difference in the brain that is saying, hey, I'm happier. I am like living more in this state. And it's certainly easier to find a, romantic partner when we are in a truly happy and enjoyment state. And summer for some people because of the sun, because of the vitamin D, because for many people that don't participate in winter sports, they don't get out so much in the winter and they're not in nature. They're not doing all these things that we see actually create change in the body. So I think that's the reason we oftentimes see this romance of the summer happen, scientifically speaking.
Audrey, what about you? Is there anything in the universe or
Well, I was thinking about being a New Yorker and going to school and how the summertime, we're programmed for these cycles. Summertime means let's go have fun and there's more time. So I think that's what it is. But I live in LA. And I think also after the fires and everything that we've been through here, we're ready for some really good times. People are passionate about you know, falling in love and wanting to get into something that makes them happy after all we've been through.
Yeah, I just saw actually that a company has resurrected a suntan lotion brand that smells like the old Bain du Soleil #2,
Wow.
which if I smell that, it would bring me right back to the
Yeah.
1970s, Jones Beach, West End, to lying on the beach, scantily clad, looking for the cute boys on the beach, which is a really good segue to our walk down memory lane. And we'll start with you, Jim. Is there a summer in your life that you remember particularly fondly because it's summer romance?
Sure. Okay. Well, that's fun. First of all, let me chime in one last thing to resonate with the past comments. I was walking along this on a walk this morning and admiring flowers, and I thought that makes sense. It's summer, so the birds and the bees and the flowers. So it's summertime. That's when things flourish. That's when things thrive. That's when all the photosynthesis really winds up. So yeah, honor the biosphere, flora and fauna. If you think about it, we're animals, right? So we just respond to that, and I love that comment about the serotonin. So succinctly to answer your question, 2 years ago I retired, and literally a week afterwards I came to Florida. I'm from DC, as I mentioned, and I was just had this goofy grin on my face probably for the first year. It's like I graduated. So I've psychologically, I just felt like I was wearing a winner's NASCAR checkered flag all day because, yeah, I pulled it off. My project management, I'm thriving, flourishing. So it's kind of self-love, if you will, 2 years ago. But this is a fun story real quick. So when I was about 14, a friend, his grandmother had a place in Laguna Beach, South Laguna. And Audrey, you're from LA, so you know all that. So we ended up staying with his grandmother. So if you think about a 14-year-old boy, all this new hormones and all this stuff going on. And it turned out that a few doors down in this little cove in South Laguna, all kinds of very wealthy LA folks had summer homes. And remember the Waltons, that show? Of course, everybody remembers the Waltz. It's the reruns. Well, Earl Hamner was the creator. He was actually, John Boy was him growing up in West Virginia. They had a home there, and his kids would hang out with my friend and I. Were 14, 15 years old. And the daughter, I was so smitten with her. So that was summer love. Yeah, the one that got away.
Well, now you could Google her and find out what became of her. So,
Well, her brother, who was a wild man, he was a writer apparently for The Young and the Restless for years. I won't mention her name, but anyway, yeah, who knows? Yeah. So that's just dredged up from the recesses of my head when you're talking about fun, silly. Okay.
Audrey, what about you? Do you have
Well, I'm
any
I'm thinking
evocative
about
summer memories?
I'm thinking about how I met my husband in the summer. It was kind of a magical thing. I got this message in my ear that said go on plentyoffish.com, and it haunted me. It was wild. It wouldn't let me sleep. So I went on the site And I'm, what am I doing here? What am I doing here? What, leave me alone, leave me alone. And then I found this guy on it. There was so many. I mean, God, dating sites. And I saw this guy and he said, I really want to help the world. And I'm like, okay, great. I'll get on it. Get me off. I ended up marrying him. So it was really kind of like a magical thing to be sent to him and meet him that way from a voice in my ear. So
Love
I
that.
met him in summer.
Cool.
That's my story.
Diane, what about you?
Well, I'm also thinking about my current partner, my boyfriend. We've been together for 4 years. I'm divorced. And so he's my, first major love. And I believe the final major love after my last husband. And we had this summer 3 years ago where we went to this island called Anguilla, which is near St. Martin. It's in the Caribbean for anybody that doesn't know it. And what was interesting about this island was we were expecting like a much more like kind of classic Caribbean tourist kind of experience. And it was not that, which ended up being completely amazing. But when the first like week we were there for, I think it was like 2.5 weeks. The first week we were there, we hardly saw any other human. It was like so isolated. And what was really amazing about that is like instill a newer relationship to be that much time with one person and to actually just like have complete unstoppable conversation, to just be making each other laugh and all of that in a situation where it was like, oh, there wasn't anything else to kind of stimulate us or to get in the way of going that level of deep. So it really just was a good, I think, test in many ways for being like, oh yeah, we can spend that much time, just me and him without all this outside stimulus and leave and be like, that was incredible. And it's a really amazing island. I am now completely like, I would buy a house there. I absolutely love that island. So we
And
fell
do
in
you
love
ever
with it.
recommend that to your clients? Do you ever say, if you're at a crossroads, just go somewhere, unplug, and get to know each other again?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes. I think it depends upon where people are with their like level of communication, right? And if people are like not at a point where they're communicating super well, sometimes that can be almost like too much. And if like so if there's like that foundation oftentimes that is needed to practice on like how we actually have and bring ourselves back to communication, intimacy and all that. So I do in cases where it's like we already have this foundational work laid and then it's like a great way to go deeper from there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And Jim and I have actually talked about, the first 90 days of any new relationship and how critical they are. And you don't really get to know somebody until you've traveled with them.
Yeah.
And then, maybe had a crisis along the way, like a flight delay or lost luggage, and seeing how they handle it. And it was so interesting during the pandemic. That was like a go or no go for a lot of couples because there was this extended period of time where they were off from social interaction. And that's why the divorce rate is, I want to keep things upbeat, but why the divorce rate is high among empty nesters because the kids leave. You no longer have the soccer duties and the household duties. And it's like, is there enough glue there left to keep it together? So, like Jim's story, my romantic summer story actually dates back to when I was 14 years old. I had just lost a lot of weight. It was my duckling to swan era. And I was actually out in East Hampton, where I am now, and had met this guy similar to your story, where they had a summer house right on the ocean. It was the son, not the owner of the house. And he had a beach motorcycle, which I thought was the coolest thing on earth. I'd never seen one before. And I just have very vivid memories of riding on the back of his beach motorcycle in the hot summer and, my parents not really knowing or caring where I was and feeling glamorous for the first time in my teenage life. So, I've had many great summers since. In fact, I was just thinking about all the summers that I've spent out here with my kids and my grandkids. But yeah, that romantic summer memory will live on, and maybe I'll get to reenact it at the age of 69 as opposed to 14. So I'm hanging in there with hope. So what are some of the things that I know, Jim, you just started in a relationship, Audrey and Diane, you just mentioned that you're with somebody. What are some of the things that you can do over the summer to make sure that romance stays alive and well?
Well, some thought I had was, love, if you will, summer love. The topic is about as broad as the universe, if you will. But in the context of relationships, deep relationships, significant relationships, the time-tested relationships that Audrey and Diane focus in on with their clients or people. The idea is that it's on us. It's our responsibility to be our best selves, thriving and flourishing, and by keeping balance. A lot of people, I mean, I'm 67 years old. I'm not a rookie at, the grand parade of people. I'm pay attention to the parade, you see. And I think one of the real keys to personal happiness and then relational happiness, and then if nobody's happy, you're not going to have romance, okay? So one of the keys there is just essentially self-management to find balance for thriving and flourishing. In other words, if a person's not lovable, if they're not lovely, if they're out of balance, if they're too freaked out about things, it's just hard to love them and it's hard to be romantic. And Dr. Diane mentioned this in a couple of her very recent videos. Life, and we know this, we're not just spring chickens. We we know when life can get real complicated and our proclivities can be a real impediment to someone loving us. And so it always goes back to being self-aware and having a balanced life, having a life that's lovable. So that's macro, that's big picture. That's the universal standpoint.
Yeah, the
I'm
other thing I
so
was
glad you
thinking of, Jim, when you were talking is also like distinguishing between, what's a relationship and what's a fling. And, especially as someone who's also on the dating apps and has been for a while, you learn how to distinguish between people who are just looking for the weekly hookup versus people who really are serious about monogamy and a relationship and not deluding yourself into thinking that if somebody is just out for summer fun, that they're going to end up being your soulmate. So managing expectations, I think, is really key. And the other thing that occurred to me, and then, Diane and Audrey, I really would love to hear your perspectives too, is just because you're into somebody or you love them doesn't mean you're going to have all of the same interests. And if you're with somebody who wants to go scuba diving or on safari, and your idea of a good time over the summer is lying on the beach reading a book, you need to have that conversation before you end up going somewhere and making each other miserable. Or, if you don't wanna have sex 7 days a week, but your partner is thinking of the excursion as being a chance to get it on every day, day and night, you're gonna have a disconnect. So, Diane, I'll let you take that on, either building off of what I said or your own perspectives when you're because summer is a time when you're traveling with other people. Sometimes the kids are away at camp, you're on your own. Like, what are some of the sort of the guidelines that you have for making sure that it is really a hot summer as opposed to the summer before your divorce?
Yeah, Jim and Nancy, you both really set me up for one of the biggest points I think I wanted to make in our time today, which is that in this concept of summer love, I think there is this huge distinction that we need to make between, hey, are we talking about a hot summer fling? Or are we talking about hot summer love with somebody that we are really either in a relationship with or are deeply committed and want to be in a relationship with? And I'm like going back to this hot summer I had in my mind when I was in my 20s, and I met this cute boy and we had great chemistry. And a couple times after hanging out, he said to me, you could tell I was like really into him. And he said to me, he's like, Diane, look at your values, look at where you're going with your life, look at like my values, where I'm going. And he really pointed out that we were going in completely different directions. And he said to me, he's like, I can't be available. I don't think it's a good idea if we do this, like, plan of having a relationship He's like, but I would really like to hang out with you for a few months and enjoy. And it was amazing. It was so cool to get that feedback into immediate, like it flipped my brain immediately from, oh, all of that relationship energy and all that projection to the future and that what we do. And I had this amazing summer. I still think about that man and some of the sweet times we had together. But it was so easy then to not get like locked into this road of than going and trying to make this relationship work, that he was right. Like as soon as he said that, I immediately was able to see like, oh, right, this is not actually what I'm looking for long term. So I think in like having a hot summer, it's like, okay, well, if we are dating and just exploring and you meet somebody that seems interesting, I think the more that we can be honest with like ourselves and with the partner in that moment around just being honest around like, okay, is this just hot summer love? And if it is, putting it in that box, enjoying it, being honest about it, and really working to not future project is essential. And then from a standpoint of more of the long term and of hot summer, say with a longer term partner or somebody that truly has the potential to be that, then I think the other thing to really consider is, okay, well, how do we bring back, like I do so much in my work, how do we bring back those feelings of desire and passion? And a lot of what we do, and I go way more into my work than I know we have time today, because I know we got to get Audrey on here talking. But where we're really stimulating that dopamine, and we do that through novelty is one of the biggest things. So I have like this yes, no, maybe checklist that is, I think it's close to 10 pages long. And it just goes through a wide variety of things intimately, sexually, that people may
Mhm.
have not have thought of. And so it's a really fun thing to do with a partner to say, oh, let's go through this checklist and let's say like, what are the things we both line up about? And then it gives you all of these different new things to try, to explore, to bring back that novelty and desire with together.
Love that. Love that.
I just wanted to say, Jim, something magical that you said, which was the best self. It's such an important point because, we have to simplify it. You really have to marry yourself. You really have to love yourself. And if you do not love yourself enough, stop. Don't even bother going into a relationship because you're going to have this donut hole and you're going to ask someone to save you. And that's very dangerous. But if you, what I call sovereignty of the self, love yourself, heal yourself, take the time to know what you're doing in your relationships, track what you've done as a mirror, then in that self-love, you've got the magic key. And if you love yourself, wow, you're ready to go anywhere. It doesn't matter your age. I mean, really, age is blind, right? It doesn't matter. Those are belief systems. But the love of self and shining that out, you're a magnet to find love in the summer and any season.
Love that. Love that. That is one of those brilliant sound bites that I was just talking about. So, coming attractions before we wrap up, we have episodes coming up. You're talking about summer activities, Diane. We've got summer books, summer movies, summer sex, because my sex episodes, as you can imagine, always are the most popular. Summer travel. So basically, anything, summer food, anything that you may enjoy over the summer, there will be a podcast around it. Or if you have ideas for other summer fun things that you would like to slot in, just email me at nancyashenker@gmail.com. You can listen to our podcast episodes on Spotify or Apple, or you could watch them and see our lovely faces on YouTube. Follow me on Nancy AF underscore on Instagram or nancyaf.com, which is my personal brand website. And Diane, if people would like to get a hold of you because they are having challenges in their relationships or would like to pregame for the summer months, what's the best way to reach you?
I would say start with one of my free offerings. So, like my yes, no, maybe list, you can find at mysexdoc.com. So, super easy to remember, mysexdoc.com. So I would say start with that, get your feet wet on some of this stuff, and you'll find other ways. Once you go there, you'll find other ways of getting a hold of me and working with me. But such an easy way to start, easy way to kick off summer with fantasy and fun and novelty for you and your partner. So just go to mysexdoc.com.
Very cool. Audrey, how can people get a hold of you?
AudreyHope.com or at the Audrey Hope on Instagram. I post everything, little nuggets, little 1 minute, 2 minute ways to help you with a relationship and some of your problems.
Terrific. And Jim, do you want anybody to reach you, or you're just
I would
living
be happy to be reached through you, Nancy. In other words, if they read your little booklets, they're Jim McGrew approved.
I know. I call it the McGrew method because, as I said, it is so much a polar opposite from how I think. And as I've learned over the years, is that, as long as you're not screaming and yelling and throwing things at each other, being with a partner who is different from you, friends who are different from you in some way, and just learning how to communicate in a very civilized way. We're living in a very polarized world. And the person who is your soulmate may not check all the boxes, but as long as they check the important ones, or as Jim calls them, the dots, we have, instead of red flags and green flags, we have dots. And you have to see the dots in order to connect the dots, which is one
Wow,
of my
I love
favorite
it.
McGrewisms. And you'll be able to see Jim's dots and my dots in my book, Finding Love with Nancy AF, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback. So it's beach friendly. You could just roll it up, stick it in your bag, read it on the beach, and maybe that's how you'll find your soulmate. So you have been a tremendous group. Wishing that all of you will find some form of summer love or summer passion or just a really memorable hookup this summer. And remember to be age blind. Peace out.
Jazz.